Hi, this is Jeff, and today I'm going to be doing another countdown list, 15 of the best superhero movies made so far. This is early 2016. We've got a whole slew of movies coming out this year, superheroes. You've got Deadpool, X-Men Apocalypse, of course Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. There's a whole bunch of on the Marvel front that are coming out this year. Suicide Squad's coming out this year. So, that being said, I've decided with all these superhero movies that have come out, that have been coming out since really 2000 and even before that into the 80s, I decided that I would come up with a list of the superhero movies that I feel make the cut, so to speak. And I was going to do top 10, but then I decided since so many have come out, especially recently, that it might be a bit unfair to just do top 10, so I skimmed it to 15. So I'm going to do top 15 of the superhero movies, so bear with me. Number 15, okay. The Dark Knight Rises. The last of the Christopher Nolan Batman films. It wasn't necessarily the best, but it was still an excellent film. There were some plot holes to it, but it was nothing that really distracted, at least me, from the film. It was still very well done. It fit with the trilogy. It was a very good conclusion to it. So I have no gripe with it. It makes the cut. It's number 15. Okay. On to 14, a rather fitting number, sort of a bookend, Batman Begins, Christopher Nolan's first movie in his Batman franchise. It set up a lot. It took Batman a more serious direction. I wasn't a huge fan of the Tim Burton, style, I guess, his darker style. Everything was gothic looking, and while I think that certainly works with certain Tim Burton movies, and I think it did to some degree work with Batman, it just wasn't what I liked. I like Art Deco. I don't necessarily mind Gothic style, but I don't know, something about it didn't necessarily click with me. Christopher Nolan's universe he created did, so it makes the cut. On to 13. X2 X-Men United. This took the first X-Men movie, which was sort of silly. It was fun as hell, at least this time, and it took it in a more serious direction. Now, I really wanted to put the first X-Men movie on this list. It didn't quite make the cut, but part of it with me was nostalgic reasons, and the first X-Men movie doesn't really hold up as well with time, unfortunately. I've rewatched it, and I still get a lot of pleasure out of it, but it's nostalgic pleasure. But X2 you can watch, and even though it has a very similar style, the cast is the same, it wasn't made that long after. Because of its tone, and it handles a little more serious social issues, it handles like the mutant situation as sort of a metaphor for the gay rights movement, and it's not too heavy-handed. I don't know, because of the serious social implications of the movie, it made the cut. So okay, so on to 12. Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 came out, and it introduced it introduced movie-going audiences who weren't familiar with comic books to Doc Ock. And I believe it was Alfred Molina. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that or got the name wrong, but I believe he played Doc Ock, and he did a very excellent job. It was a very... It was fun. It was still campy like the first movie, but it tried to be a little more serious, and it was a lot of people's favorite Spider-Man movie as a result. It still is, and it was very well done, so kudos to that movie. So, we're on to our next one at number 11. We have Superman 2. Superman 2, classic film, and it's got a lot of controversy because it essentially had two different cuts and two different directors, Richard Lester and Richard Donner. Either cut has some flaws, either cut has some benefits. If you're a Superman fan, I recommend checking out both the original Superman 2 and Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. For me, just from a storytelling point of view, as far as a film series, I think Superman 2 works better, the Lester cut, because the Donner cut, you have to kind of rewrite the ending of the first movie for it to be good and for it to make sense. And since the first movie ended the way it did, you know, you can't necessarily change history on that, so Lester unfortunately makes the cut on that one. Number 10, another X-Men movie, X-Men Days of Future Past. It was very well done. It just came out not a year or two ago. It managed to merge the cast of the X-Men franchise that Bryan Singer started with the X-Men First Class cast that Matthew Vaughn did. I didn't really think it could be done. There was a whole slew of characters that just seemed like it would be kind of a clusterfuck, and they made it work. I have no idea how they did it, but kudos to them. So, our next entry, number 9, Captain America, the Winter Soldier. I actually very much enjoyed Captain America, the first Avenger, the first movie in the series. I know some people had gripes with it. I thought it was a very fun movie. I thought it was basically the best you can do with Captain America. I don't mind Captain America, but to me, he's not as good of a standalone character as sort of like the Hulk. He works best in an ensemble. But the Winter Soldier managed to take him and put him in spy espionage genre and make him a far more interesting character. And even though I really liked him in the first movie, the first Avenger, I have to give him mad credit for this movie for managing to top that when I didn't even think that was possible. And our next entry right now, Watchmen. Zack Snyder directed what was deemed an impossible adaptation of Watchmen. He changed a few things. A lot of people weren't happy about that. I, for one, did not mind the changes. I thought they added some dimension to the story. They made sense, and from a film standpoint, they were better than a direct adaptation, at least in my opinion. I've seen some of the comic. I haven't read all the graphic novel, but I'm aware of the changes they made. And at least from my view book, I thought the changes were for the best. I don't necessarily think straight adaptations are a wise decision because movies and books are different formats and they play out differently, and I think the best filmmakers are aware of that and don't necessarily try to adapt everything completely faithfully. Of course, you have the other extremes like the adaptation of World War Z, which is a topic for another discussion we won't get into now. But, okay, moving on down the list, we have Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy, another entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Very fun. I was one of the people that did not think it was going to work. I thought it was going to be Marvel's big flop, at least their first big flop. I didn't really see how a talking raccoon could work, and he turned out to be one of the best characters. Groot, Rocket Raccoon, all these characters really shouldn't have worked. And James Gunn, probably because he came from an unorthodox background of filmmaking through trauma, he managed to make it work. And I don't know of any other filmmaker that could have done that. I'm sure they could have, but I have a lot of respect for him for being able to do that, because that was not an easy task. Our next film, yet another from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the film that launched it, Iron Man. It's hard to dispute Robert Downey Jr.'s charisma, his charm, what he brought to the franchise, what he still brings to the franchise, why he's earned his massive paychecks. And it's a fun movie even to this day. You can go back and the character has evolved, but it still feels very much like the same character, even over the course of the Avengers movie, so it's got to be on my list. So this next pick of mine, which is coming in at number 5, which I'm sure will be kind of a controversial pick. I can't say that, sorry. I don't know why. It will gather controversy. There, I got it. Man of Steel. Zack Snyder's first entry in the DC Extended Universe, the film universe. Now, we haven't seen where the film universe is going right now. We have Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, Suicide Squad coming out this year. We'll kind of have to wait to see how those play out, to see how well the DC Extended Universe is going to do. I have hope for it. I like a lot of the characters in the DC library. And on the TV end, DC is killing it. You know, they have The Flash, Arrow, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow that just premiered not too long ago. They just had Constantine. They have Gotham still on. I mean, they are killing it right now. And regardless of the quality of some of the shows, it's hard to dispute the fact that Marvel, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, right now none of those shows, at least on their network end, have anything on the DC shows. Now, I like Daredevil. I like what I've seen of Jessica Jones. The Netflix shows are offering a different tone. It's not something I like the Daredevil show. I like Jessica Jones as an independent entry. I don't necessarily know if I like the fact that they're a part of the interconnected universe, just because they're very different tones, but that, again, is a TV show and a subject for another discussion. Coming at number 4, The Avengers. The Avengers, I don't know, it was one of the first superhero movies that sort of felt like it got everything right in a long time as far as feeling like a comic book movie. It was fun. It didn't take itself too seriously. That was one drawback I felt with Avengers Age of Ultron, and that's kind of plays into both Avengers and Man of Steel. Is one of the biggest drawbacks I have with that film is that they seem to be responding to critics of some of those movies too much. They made it less lighthearted, less fun. Like with Man of Steel, they focused 20 minutes of the movie of rescuing people, because everyone criticized Man of Steel's destruction porn, as they called it. I didn't see that much of a problem. Superhero movies, they've been destroying cities for pretty much the beginning of the superhero film genre, but everyone had a problem with Man of Steel, so, that's how they responded, and I felt it took away from the sequel, but the first Avengers was top-notch in my book. It was fun, and it looked like everyone was having fun making it, and everyone was having fun watching it. You can't beat that. So number 3 on my list, the original Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Tobey Maguire played him. For all the reasons I loved Avengers was the reasons I love Spider-Man. It embraced the camp factor without going too far. It wasn't like the Adam West Batman series or movie. It just had fun. It Willem Dafoe was hamming it up as Green Goblin, and it still managed to teach the important lessons that were inherent in the Spider-Man comic books. With great power comes great responsibility. It was just an excellent film. I have no gripes with it whatsoever. Number 2 on my list, Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, the middle chapter. Now, middle kids usually don't get a lot of respect. This was the second chapter that it was a rare sequel that improved on the original. There's only a few examples, like Empire Strikes Back, Terminator 2. A lot of that had to do with Heath Ledger's Joker. It's going to be interesting to see how Jared Leto does. He seems to be taking a different, interesting approach, which I think is necessary. I don't necessarily know if it's going to top Ledger's portrayal, but I like the fact that he doesn't necessarily seem to be copying Heath Ledger, and he's definitely trying to make his own Joker while still being as true to the comic as he can. So it's going to be an interesting film, Suicide Squad. So, and my number 1 pick, one of the first, Superman the movie. Superman the movie, it just had so much going for it. It pretty much launched all superhero films. You know, there's the tagline, "You will believe a man can fly." And at that time, now it might even seem a little dated, but it's one of those rare older movies like Star Wars where you can look back and it still feels pretty fresh. The costumes, yes, they are a little dated, the spandex, and the same is true with Star Wars, but the effects are still not bad for this time. And it was made years ago. I believe it came out in 1979. So that gives you an idea how well that film has, managed to stand the test of time. And a lot of that has to do with Christopher Reeves. He gave an amazing performance as Clark Kent and Superman, which you are the same person, but they portray each character. He portrayed him very differently. Clark Kent, he slumped his shoulders. He was he was just very different. Superman had good posture. He was very confident. He was very assertive. He was just like almost the exact opposite Clark Kent, and it was just very interesting that he managed to essentially make that character seem different aside from the glasses. So you could actually believe people wouldn't necessarily relate the two with each other. Plus, Christopher Reeves and Margot Kidder had very good chemistry. I joke about how Superman the movie, along with Ghost, even though they're genre films, that I feel are two of the best romance movies or romantic themed movies. And yeah, it's just, you could buy the chemistry between those two, and it doesn't seem forced. And I think that actually helps the fact of the film that it's not a main focus point, but it plays heavily into the movie, and it's just a fun movie, I guess. It started it off, I love it. It got me into comic book movies as a kid, and you can't beat Christopher Reeves. You really can't, even to this day. I like Brandon Routh. I like Henry Cavill. I like Tom Welling, but Reeves will always be Superman to most of us, even more than George Reeves. So I respect Cavill, I respect Routh, but Reeves will always be Superman. So that's my top 15 superhero films so far as of 2016. It'll be interesting to see if any films get knocked off the list, put on the list, what changes. Hopefully I'll be able to make another video in a year, and if some things have changed, I have high hopes for Batman vs. Superman. I'm not sure about movies like Deadpool. I have high hopes for Captain America Civil War as well. So I'm just waiting to see how some of these movies pan out. And until then, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Deskies. Take care.